Yep.
All right, we're going to get started with the program. Brian Howard introduced us, I think, last time talking about this. Yeah, so about 2 weeks ago. Didn't even really knew what coopering is, so really excited to see it, hear all about it. So, Brian Howard.
Alrighty. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. So, you say Wood and Loom, that's our small, basically it's a hobby business we have, my wife and I. Wife Debbie back there, she came along. She's going to make faces at me during the talk, so anyway. But she does weaving, I do the wood side. And just wanted to talk a little bit today about coopering, because there were some questions we had at the bench talk. So if you want to click to the first, okay. I don't have a clicker. Alrighty. So there's basically branches of the coopering trade. And what I've got laid out here is slack coopering. This is number one, which basically it's for dry goods. You probably remember seeing nail kegs years ago. That would have been slack coopering, but they would have been held together with wood banding and things like that, a couple hundred years ago. Actually, they've used them, they still use them up until like, I think the 1930s or so, right before World War II, if I remember correctly. Has it got wire banding on it? Wooden banding? Okay. Because I've seen some with the wire banding on it. The next is white coopering, and this is basically what I do here. Every one of these buckets, and this is a piggin, it's white coopering. It's straight-sided, straight staves, to hold the liquid. And you can put milk in it, water, whatever you want to is liquid. So, and then wet coopering, we all know about our whiskey barrels. Okay, that's your wet coopering or tight coopering. Okay, next. And this is kind of a drawing, a layout of the steps of how to go through and do a barrel. You see number one there, basically splitting out the stave out of a piece of wood that's basically riven out of a log at the length you needed. And you just go through the steps there. Number two, you're shaping the inside of it. Three, you're shaping the actual curves. Now this is for a barrel, like I said. Four is basically you're backing the stave. Five, you're going in there. They're using a rounding plane to hollow the plane out or to get it smooth. Actually, five is the actual hollowing. And number six, at the very bottom, that's a scorp plane, which basically it's not only is it curved this direction, but it's also this way. So you can do this with it and however you want to do with it. And I think, let's see, we go back up, bring it back out. Now that's step six there, where you're actually shaping the stave. You're putting the angle on it. This is where it gets critical with the angles. And then 7, basically that's called raising the barrel, okay? 8's putting it all together. 9's driving on your hoops. 10 is, they're showing it here being steamed, but you'll see a lot of times, like if you ever go to Colonial Williamsburg, if you see them making a barrel, they'll actually put it on a crescent or a crivet, and it's just fires and it heats up the fibers of the wood, the lignum that's in the oak, and makes it more pliable. And then they'll drive the hoops on and tighten everything up. And then 11 through 15 is just the steps of compressing everything and driving on the setting hoops, and putting the head in. And I'll go through some of that, how that's all done here in a few minutes. This is another drawing. It kind of gives you an idea of what the different sizes of the buckets, the barrels. The good thing is this diagram right up here shows you the profile that you need for your head. If you look at that, you'll notice that this piece that goes that direction, that's your head, and you see the angles you have to have on that groove, or what's called the crows. Also, that piece that groove is on, that flat right there, it has to be really, as about as circular as you can get it. Because you run your crows around the inside of that head to cut that groove, and that groove has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, it's going to leak. Okay, you'll see. I took apart a Jack Daniel's barrel half the other day, or a few weeks ago. They use a lot of wax. I'm telling you. I was like, what is this garbage here? Yeah, a lot of wax in the head. So, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, this is what I was talking about, this groove right here. This is the head. This line or this plane right here is what I was talking about. It has to be completely round and just as flat as straight as you can get it. Um, so that's critical. And this is the chime up here. That's put in to help you get the head in. Okay, just got to tap it in, loose up the staves at the top, or take one of these top bands off. You can see some of these barrels here. They're held on with wooden hoops. More than likely, it looks like saplings that they have to do. They have to cut a groove in, or a clip kind of slides in, just holds it together. I have been experimenting with that to see if I can do it myself. That has been one of the most difficult things that what's that? Well, it's not so much, it's getting the material is the biggest problem. Because I've split out ash, I've ribbed ash, I've steamed ash, but it's, when I try to get something down to this diameter, it wants to break real easy, snap. So I'm still experimenting. And these are all metal bands here. All right, I just click on the next one. You know, okay, don't hold this against me. I got this from a Russian site. So. Yeah, so, yeah. I'm thinking that the end is like how much it holds in liters. Okay. What's that? It's an L? Oh, okay. See, I don't know any English. I just got it off the website. But anyway, but that shows you that's in liters, and yeah. Well, actually not well, no, it'd be liters. Oh, yeah, those are actually those are millimeters. Yeah, you said, yeah. Okay. All right. So if I can click. A what? I'm thinking it's about 34, 38 gallons, something like that. For the whiskey industry, it is. Yeah, yeah. I think it's the same thing for the the barrels. Oh, what's that? but on a smaller scale, right? So he gets a 34-gallon keg. What you're saying? Okay. But this is a barrel that was up at the Frontier Culture Museum by Stanton, if you ever been out that way. And you can see how they've held this barrel together with the bands, or the hoops, or the wood saplings, basically. You still have the bark on it. So the guy that does it wasn't there that day we were there, so I couldn't ask any questions. But that's how, and you can see the difference is, if you see with these, you have one band to hold the head on. There's 4 here on this one, this wood. So you have to double to triple, or even more, if you're going to use wood to hold everything together, hold it tight. All right, so, all right, next one. This is on a smaller scale. This one here is an original British canteen that was from the Napoleonic Wars. I don't have this. I got this off the internet. I've had some folks come up to me and say, "Can you make these?" And I can make them. It's basically a straight-sided bucket. Well, no, it's wood. If you go back and look at the British regulations in that time period, they call for it's called to use the best Riga oak, and it has to hold about 3 pints, and it has to be 7 inches in diameter and 3 3/4 inches thick. So there's a whole bunch of regulations that go along with that, but and there's 20 staves in each one of these canteens. So each one of the staves is about that wide, and they're about 1/2 inch thick and about so long. And you just put it together. The one that's the most difficult to use or make is the one with the spout on it, because that's incorporated with that stave. So you have to carve it all in and cut it all out. So that's the next project, or one of my next projects.
Is that like a plug?
Yes, that's the plug. Yeah, this is actually a reproduction of this canteen. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea how small you can go. And everybody's seen the tankards, little wooden tankards. Yeah, you can make those. I like making the buckets. They're easier to make than those little tankards. As far as tools, okay, tools of the trade. Well, I've got some up here. If you go ahead and click on the next one, Terry. This is what I had to work with when I went to the School of Coopering up in Somerset, Pennsylvania. The Somerset Historical Center has a weekend coopering school, and they give you a shaving horse, a cooper's plane, and a straight draw knife, and some other things there. And they give you basically the stave, which is the stave right here. They get 12 of them. And you have to basically turn that into a bucket. And this is what I made there on the weekend. I use this as my example of where I'm coming from and where I'm at now, and the difference. But this is also a bucket I use when I go to different events and things like that. I'll take it apart and let kids put it together. I'll show them how they stack it up and we'll put the head in it, so they get a kick out of that. And it teaches them, you know. Yeah. Believe me, it helps a lot. Because once you get it together, and this, you know, it was funny. I put it together, and we put water in it, and that thing leaked like itself. I was like, okay. First bucket, you learn from the first bucket. The guy that ran the school, Mark Ware, was a cooper in Colonial Williamsburg for years, and this is, matter of fact, this is the student manual that came with it. You can see how much information's there. So there's a lot of basic stuff, but you got to get into it. So, all right. And now this is my cooper plane, and this thing I had to make it myself. It's made out of hard maple that I laminated together, and I had to cut I tried to use the cutout for the bedding of the plane blade is period. So when I say period, it's like something from 200 years ago. Okay, because there's a style called Krenov, I think is how you pronounce it, where you use a little metal pin across the body of the plane holding on. That's like a 1940s or 1950s, if I remember correctly. But this goes back to using a wedge. Go on to the next one. And you can see how this is the actual working surface of it. When I talk to people, I tell them, this is basically a large joiner's plane, but instead of taking the plane to the wood, I'm taking the wood to the plane. So I have to sit there and shave it down. And that's when I work on, that's what gives me these angles. And you can see the angles in this one. And you also notice too, it's narrower here than it is at the bottom. Can you see it? All right. I have to figure out, using that plane, how to get it down to that edge, or to that thickness here, or width here, and the width at the bottom, plus those angles. And the easiest way of doing it is to basically start a little bit, just nibble all the way down, and then a full stroke. And that'll give you a smooth edge, and just do the same thing on the other side. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is how many strokes have you taken? Because you don't want this thing to be lopsided. All right. Well, not so much with the grain, but the actual trapezoid figure it is. Because if you don't take the same number of strokes off the sides, you're going to end up being off. So in the bucket will be all cattywampus. They would call it a drunken bucket. Eyeballs. Eyeballs and experience. That's the only thing you can do it. And you can see right here how I did that opening, and this being the throat of the plane, the bed here. Now this blade here I got from Red Rose Reproduction. It's actually a wedge-shaped blade. When I say wedge, it's 3/16 at the edge end, and it's at 1/8 at the other end of it. So it's slanted, and what that does is helps jam the blade to keep it from sliding out with the wedge. If you understand, if I explain that correctly. Okay. Exactly. Yep. So, alrighty, next. Now that's my shaving horse I made. You'll see a lot of shaving horses where there'll be an angle coming down. The actual bed will be angled down. I decided to go with a straight one because I have seen that one in this book. Basically, they call it a white Cooper's shaving horse. It gives you more of a straight pull rather than trying to pull up. I don't know if have you ever tried to use a shaving horse where you have to pull up? You definitely tell the difference what part of your body you're using. Because when I pull it straight, I'm using my lower back, well, not my upper not my shoulders, but they call those lats. Lats. Had to think about biology there for a minute. And this is basically, this is right here. Yep. And this arm here has 3 holes in it that I can adjust how thick the material is going to be. So if I need to do something a little bit thicker than a stave, then I'll go. But this right here is set for a standard stave, and that's the lowest we'll go. And I just basically put my foot on it and push it forward, and that pressure right here will hold that in place. I've shaved oak with it. You know, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tight. The body's made out of poplar. This is red oak. This is a piece of green ash that I had. I had some green ash in the tree in my yard. Cut them down, and they were so full of those ash borer beetles, it was ridiculous. I couldn't use the wood. But you can see some of the holes like right there. And this foot is hickory. So. All right, next. And this is my anvil. It's basically a small, if you want to call it a big anvil. Not quite. It's not a large blacksmith anvil. Okay, made for more like tinning work and things like that. And you guys that know, you have to tell me. I can never remember what the hole in an anvil is called. There's a name for it, and I cannot remember. What's that? It might be. Yeah, Hardy's a square. I'm not sure what I had to go back and look. I had a blacksmith tell me what it was. Of course, I forgot what it was. But I'll use this for setting my hoops and things like that, setting the rivets in the hoops, and also use this for setting the bevel on the hoop. You can see it on these metal hoops. You see these like little dents here. Okay, when you take a piece of straight steel like this is some of the hoop material. What's that? Pritchard hole, is that what it's called? Okay. Google. It's great. But in order to get this to the hoops to form to the side of the bucket, I have to hammer along the edge here. And what that does is actually curves this. All right. And then I can wrap it around and get the measurement on it and whatnot. So, all right. I haven't done that yet. I've got some folks that want me to make something. As a matter of fact, I had a guy ask me to make a 5-gallon water bucket for him with a spigot. And I said, okay. I just got to figure it out. All right. Next. This is my, I call it my raising table or raising buckets. These are just some of the tool holders. This comes apart. You can see I've used a tusk tenon joint here on the legs. The top just comes off. This is oak on the top. This is fir, some pine. Actually, this is some white pine I had left over that I couldn't use for the buckets because of knots in them or whatnot. But that's what I use to just putting the buckets together. All right, let's see what's next. So, question is, why did I get into coopering? Well, for years, we've been doing living history programs, reenactments for years. I'm not a young guy anymore. I can't run through the fields and all this stuff anymore. So I said, I need to do something that's interesting. I've been to, we go to Colonial Williamsburg, 3 times a year, if not more. We love the place, all right? First time I saw the Cooper, I went like, wow, I'd like to try to do that. So when I retired, I got close to retirement. I said, I want to learn more about this. And I saw the school up in Somerset and went to it. And of course, the pandemic hit right after that. So I kind of put a damper on what I really wanted to do, get more out there and get the people. So I started making this stuff. And again, like I said, this is the bucket I made there. And I just basically have progressed along. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm branching out into different types of buckets, different containers and whatnot. And the other thing is, go ahead on the next one. I try to, okay, because it's a lot easier to work with white pine than any other material. This is yellow pine, by the way, if you didn't know. I made it out of that just as an experiment. It worked. Yellow pine is I think a little bit more brittle than the white pine is. I'm working on a couple of buckets that are made out of white oak right now. But basically, they're the whiskey barrel halves. That whole process, I basically have to take one apart, then I have to steam staves, make them straight, and then I'll start cutting them down. There's a little bit of a groove, a curve to them, so it helps a little bit. But I just still got to get those angles right on the sides, because you're talking about a barrel that's like this big around going down something like this, so I have to take that angle and bring it in. Okay. But this is the real reason why I like doing this, is when I have a kid show up and say, "Wow, what is this?" That's me in my outfit, by the way, my period outfit. But we basically go through and show them how a bucket's made, and they get a kick out of it. They love it. This was actually at Jamestown, Military Through the Ages. They do it every year in March, and we go up there, and I've been doing that event for, I don't know, 20-something years, but not as a cooper. I've been doing a lot of it. Before it was military. This is the first year I did it as a cooper. So it was 2 weekends ago. So, but we've done. What's the cooper? No, a cooper, just a cooper. Or, as the joke went around there, I had somebody come up and say, "Oh, so," this was a parent said, "Oh, let's go see the copper." No, not a copper. It's a cooper. Cooper. So, but anyway, I just kind of real quick kind of go through some of the stuff I have laid up here. Some folks have already asked about them. If you ever seen a froe, this is for driving, splitting staves. This is basically a hewing axe or hewing hatchet, flat on one side. Okay, and that's going to be for driving or more shaping of your staves and whatnot. This is basically it's a turning saw that I made from a kit. That's what I use to cut out my head of the bucket once I get the dimensions done. Basically, this is a full width stave where we started cutting some angles on. Straight draw knife. Jimmy, you know what did you say? You have to slice with it? The draw knife? Skew and slice? There you go. Yep. Yep. This is a hollow knife. Okay, a hollowing knife. You see how it's curved? It's for scooping out the inside of that stave. Hoop driver. This is a small hoop driver. Larger one for taller things. I still got to work on getting this handle down a little bit. It's a little too thick. The metal pieces are antique. This is actually, the handle was with this one. But this one here, I had just the head, and I put the handle on it, and I put a piece of iron pipe to hold it. There's a pound on the end of it. But this is a jig you make out, say I want an 8-inch diameter circle or our bucket. And what I'll do is I'll get the angle, and this gives me the angle I need for each side of the stave. And one of the things that I did, watching U2 is dangerous. Yeah, so this is where I got some of that Russian stuff from. There's a guy on there, I forget Zettelman or something like that, but he basically made up a jig, and he uses basically a router bit, straight router bit stuck at an angle. He basically can adjust the angle that you need for your staves. So if I need, say, for a 10-inch bucket, I have a 30-degree angle, but I have to split that in half to make it 15 degrees on each side. You basically you have a tilting or adapter for your jigsaw or for your router, and you basically tilt it, and you have the template runs across the bearing and carves out that angle for you. And because this side, this is the head end, and this is the mouth end. The head end is wider than the mouth end, and depending on how, I try not to go more than 1/8 of an inch in on each end, because the more you add, it's going to come in. The bucket will come in. You can see how some of these slope in. Okay, that's what you want. You want that. That's why we have that thinner at the top than at the bottom. This is a rounding plane that I made. It's made out of sycamore for the body and hard maple for the wedge. I got the tool steel. I had to harden that myself. First time I ever hardened metal. That was interesting. Now these are all crows except for this one. This is a hollow. And basically what you do is you would run this along the top inside of your barrel, and you see how it's contoured like that. It makes that, scoops that out and makes it all nice and smooth on the inside. Then you would come behind that with the crows, and this one here was specifically made for barrels. It's called a hock and bill. If you look at it, you see the two little knives right here. They actually score the wood, and then the bill comes behind it and scrapes out the wood. So you sit there, you would put this on top and just run this back and forth. All right. No, I didn't make this one. Somebody from New York, Manor Rock Brothers, somewhere in New York. This one here I made. This is the one I use for all my buckets. Basically, I got this from that book, How to Make Coopering Tools, and it's just basically a piece of metal or that tool steel that hardened and just basically carved the teeth in it, and it just basically scrapes out the inside, and it only goes down to 3/16 of an inch depth. Yeah, for the head. Yeah, for the head. This is a topping plane or a sun plane, they would call it. Basically, you would run around the bottom or the top of the barrel and to make it all flat. All right, and you can see this is actually, it's curved, and it's also, the blade is skewed. So you're cutting end grain. If you ever tried to plane end grain, you know why it's done that way. That's one of the toughest parts of the piece of wood. So pretty much, that's it. If you wanted to go into the process of how I measure for a head, I can do that real quick. No. Yep. Beat it, wrap around, get the measurement, and then cut it to the length I need. You can see about what I do here with this, how much I give myself an overlap. I use a rivet, or actually a hole punch, to punch the holes in it, and the rivets are 10 rivets. So, but that is pretty much it.
So why the taper? Why not just straight side?
Well, the biggest thing is, let's see if I can, yeah, this will work, is the bands would not stay on if it was straight. I'd have to run nails in. Okay, because if this was straight sided, right, I'd have to really make sure that band was tight to drive it on. The other thing too is you can see it on this one. You can see the white, that's actually chalk. They would actually chalk the inside of the bands, and I do the same thing, and then drive it on. Okay, and what that does, that chalk will actually grip between the metal and the wood. Okay, you would think it would go on, make it slide easier, but it doesn't. It grips the wood with the metal. And these pretty much, if you keep water in them, they won't shrink. I tell people when people buy them from me, I say, keep water in it. And I had a guy a couple weeks ago, well, actually, at MTA, had one of my buckets. He said, "Yeah, thing's leaking." I said, "Did you fill it full of water and let it dry out?" "Well, yeah." Okay. So, because if you ever notice that when wood swells up, it actually, because these staves are so tight, it actually compresses the fibers even more. And then when it shrinks or it dries out, yeah, it just comes open. So that's basically all I had to do to fix it was drive down the hoops more. But to answer the question, it's really done to keep the bands on. Having that little bit of angle causes it to not come off. These actually, that's what I probably can talk about. The bands on this, these are what I call my setting bands. You notice they're thicker. They're setting bands or setting hoops. These are what I use to make the form of the bucket. Okay. These here are the permanent hoops, the last ones that go on. Okay. Yeah, this is for assembly. Because these things, you beat the dickens out of these things when you're putting them on, and you can see some of the stuff I've driven down on this. It'll actually, if it's not tight, it'll curl the wood or shave the wood off. So, let's see what else. This is all dry wood. When I even go to the store, like when I bought this yellow pine, Home Depot, I let it sit. I cut it out into the raw stave lengths, and I let it sit for at least 6 months, 6 to 7 months. The drier, the better. Yeah, you want dry stuff, because if you come in with this thing with green wood, you got the problem with everything drying out and shrinking, okay? And it's just gonna just continue to be a mess, so. And you don't want knots, no, because when you go to shave, you know, yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, and so anyway, but yeah, you want to make this as straight grain. And oh, the other thing too, real quick, does that mind tell me to stop the timer? Quarter sawn. Okay, you want quarter sawn wood. You don't want flat sawn. Well, actually, the grain's running this way, perpendicular to the flat. Okay, that way the wood will swell this way. If I had flat sawn, it would swell this way, and it won't seal. So, that's when you get into like some of those whiskey barrels. You can definitely tell they use machines that can exert a extremely amount of pressure, because some of those things were flat sawn and wow, okay, and knots. They had knots in them. You ever try to plane a knot in white oak? It's not fun. So, any other questions? No, it's steel. It's a mild steel. Yeah, it's 16 gauge mild steel. Metal warehouse right across the street. They punch out a plate for me. I was 4 feet long and about an inch thick, inch wide, I should say. So.
Is it always pine, cedar, or like other?
They used everything that would work for them. Okay. I think Colonial Williamsburg, they're using white cedar right now. I don't know if you ever try to get old white cedar around here. It's not easy. Again, this is yellow pine, and these are white, eastern white pine. And white pine. Like I say, I'm working on 2 buckets that are made out of white oak right now. Red oak, everybody knows the difference between red oak and white oak, right? Red oak has open pores in it, and it will leak like a sieve. So that's why they always went with the white oak. Okay. I've read people making them out of maple, mahogany. Okay. Anything that'll work for us local, So. Well, this one, you can see how it patinaed, if you want to call it that. So, I mean, that's. Well, they would use these. I mean, these were for, everyday use. This was for, water, milk, whatever, any kind of liquid you needed. So they would continually use these, and they more than likely, they always had some kind of liquid in them. So they were swelled up, and they never shrunk. But again, being a colorless wood, it eventually will probably rot, So, and I don't use any glue on these. There's no glue in this. The only thing I do sound right. My public speaking. Yeah, my public speaking turf. Anyway, but I'll. You've seen this flax meal, ground flax seed meal, okay? I'll get some of that, put it in a little cup, mix it up, make like a paste out of it, and I'll run it inside the crows before I drop the head in. And that, it helps seal it up, but also it dries out. And if it gets wet, it'll start swelling up itself, and it doesn't, they don't leak. Yeah, no wax, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just replaced some bands on a bucket the guy asked me to do for Military for the Ages. And I don't know where he got it from, but they didn't. You see how this has facets on the inside here on the top? I haven't cut this one. I haven't finished this one. I've worked on the other end of it, but I still got to work on this end. But the whole entire inside of the bucket is faceted like this, and it's coated with wax on the inside. I don't know how in the world they got the head to stay in there and not leak, because you're running your crows around that inside. So you're going flat to groove to flat, so it never, I don't know how they did it. Yep, they'll patina like that over the years. But that's pretty much it. If you got any other questions. All righty.